Nathaniel Tulian Meldanine, and thank you once again for joining me. My name is Lord Aramil, and today we will be talking about location. Yes, where your players are doing what. And honestly, I think that locations are perhaps one of the most important parts about good D&D. All right, you can get away without a lot of things, but giving some thought to the location that you're doing things can really make or break your campaign. So, without much further ado, we will really dive into this really important topic, honestly. Now, one thing is this is not a discussion on campaign settings. So I won't be discussing the merits between Eberron and Forgotten Realms today. I'm pretty sure one of my earlier videos did talk about a lot of campaign settings. So you can refer to that, or if you really want me to redo that, let me know in the comments section, and I'll get back to that. It's fine. But location is important. Far behind me, or right next to my face, depending on perspective, there is a map of Waterdeep. Yeah. So, Waterdeep is a good place. It has a lot of things. A city like Waterdeep, especially, can be both the home base and the adventure site. And I'll say those are the two main categories of locations in D&D. Technically, you could get into uh, like the space between the adventure site and the home base, uh, but that's kind of just either a loading screen effectively or a mini adventure site before you get to the main adventure site. So we've got these two places, the home base and the adventure site. And yes, there is overlap. I remember in my father's campaign, the adventure site was the dungeon, and that's just capitalized, the dungeon. But we had a base. I should say, we cleared out an area, fortified it, and made a base in the dungeon. So we had a home base in the adventure site, which from there we could get back to the proper home base, which is outside of the dungeon. Now, that is the exception in some ways. Uh, an urban, excuse me. I need more caffeine. Okay. An urban adventure site, so Waterdeep, Sharn, City of Towers, other large cities especially, those are kind of the reverse. So you will have a home base, quote unquote, which is the city, and you will have adventure sites in that city. It's kind of sprinkled around. And you might have a proper home base in the city itself, too. The player's favorite inn might be the real home base. Like every night they return to the inn, and you could actually have probably a pretty fun little campaign where each adventure is just another day in this a crazy city, and that could be fun. There you go, free DM ideas, right? That's why people come here. So you could have a home base. Oftentimes, when I'm playing as a player, I like to have, rent, own, whatever, some piece of property in the main city where my character can actually, go and be safe and whatever. I feel like it's more believable. Because staying in an inn is expensive when compared to actually just owning a small house in a medium class district. So, little bits of realism like that really get me going. And I enjoy, as I've mentioned before, all of my characters want to have a stronghold because I love designing strongholds. So if I have to start with, a 3-room apartment, then that's where I'm starting, right? uh Anyways, that's kind of besides the point, but I enjoy it, so definitely slow down on that. Okay. But locations, yes, locations are important. And yes, this includes the world, showing off my ticket of nerddom there. Uh, I actually I rolled this up for a reason, and this is kind of another DM thing. Okay, so there is definitely that fantasy trope of placing a map onto the table and unrolling it, you know, and like, okay, you're here and here, and you're trying to get to, over there. All right. Now, and that's cool. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's gravitas and it's thematic, and it's very good for large geographic areas. That was a map of the entirety of Middle Earth, all right, or at least canonical Middle Earth. Um, I've seen larger maps because I'm a nerd. I look for those kinds of things, but that's what people think of when they think of Lord of the Rings map, and it's good. It's helpful. Uh, when I was doing a Lord of the Rings campaign, albeit very shortly, that's what I used. Cool. But I would not suggest rolling up a map that you're planning to use frequently. Like once a session at most, and like, okay, unroll the map. Okay, you are here and you're trying to get here, and it'll take you X long. Okay, fine, good. However, uh yeah, when you're trying to use a map frequently over the course of, maybe hours, do not roll it up. It will get more frustrating than it's helpful. It's just to have it nice and flat at that point, honestly. Uh, let's see. Where is my... Sorry. I'm trying to find... I had a note here, but... Oh. One sec. Ah. Alright. There we go. Okay. Sorry, I had to plug the stream as well. So, why not? Okay. Now, other locations. So we've got a dungeon. Dungeon is a location. It's a good location. It's a fun location to wander around in. Smash some doors in, get hit by a few traps, hit a few monsters, grab loot, and go. It's the adventure location. The Goblin Lair adventure location. The volcano where the red dragon is sleeping and we really hope he doesn't wake up. Adventure location. Good stuff, right? Right. Now, I want to share a story on when location was handled poorly. Because your location really sets the tone of the adventure, okay? If you have, if you want your players to fight fire giants, you don't set the adventure in a pleasant meadow unless the meadow is on fire, okay? You get the idea. No, instead, you put them in a volcano or something similar. Now, I won't fault the person too hard because it was literally their first attempt at DMing. And DMing is difficult, which is why I suggest people don't do it immediately. If you can avoid it, have an experienced player be the DM. Okay? This person played all of one session of Dungeons and Dragons and then decided that they wanted to DM. And that was dangerous. They also decided that any homebrew race and class would be okay, which is a bad idea on so many levels. Just it's one thing if you're an experienced DM and you're going to allow players to pass a homebrew idea past you. That's fine. I do it all the time. It's what DMs are for, is to act as a referee, all right? To educate the rules and figure out what makes sense. Cool. But as a first time DM, no, do not do that. Do not. Okay, I can, like, and that's not me just trying to slam on somebody's creativity. It's me just telling you for your own sanity, do not do that. Stick to the three main books, alright? Player's Handbook, the DMG, and the Monster Manual. At least for few adventures, okay? Trust me. Make it as easy on yourself as possible. This is... I should really save this for a different video. But, okay. We'll pause there, and maybe next week I'll do a intro to dungeon mastering. Point is, this person did not have any location really in mind. Ostensibly, we were set in Eberron, which excited me because that's the first time I played in Eberron. I'd always been the DM, and I had been the DM in Eberron campaigns before, obviously. Not obviously, but either way, I was excited to be a player in Eberron because I knew the setting. I was honestly, I was probably going to be the annoying, not rules monger, but lore monger, who, you know, whatever. But I was trying, I was excited to help this new DM to flesh out the world, okay? I was going to invest a lot of ranks in, like, knowledge, random knowledge skills. At least a couple points. So, I could say, like, oh, yeah, I've heard about this, this, and this. And the DM's like, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, so that, you're right, that's what's on this street, okay. I was hoping to make his job easier. Uh, however, our first adventure was, I think it was rescuing a nobleman's son from a tower. Very, very cliche, but you know what? It's fine. It's fine. I won't knock a new DM for doing a cliche. That's probably for the best, honestly. Cliches are good in small. It's like a strong spice. Yeah. Uh, Dr. Pepper, also a strong spice of my life. But so we get to the tower, And I mean, it's a tall tower. It's like, I don't remember how many stories there were. Too many. Logically unlikely. Let's put it that way. Because it was like maybe 40 feet wide and like 8 stories tall, something dumb like that. Um, yeah. And I want to say we started like level 3, which I could also say is kind of a rough idea for a new DM, but that's that's far more DM's choice. Um, so we enter into the tower, and as soon as the last one of us had entered, the door slams shut. Yes. And the entire tower is ripped from the material plane and thrown into something. Um, Honestly, I'm pretty sure at some point we found a window or what have you, and it was described as we were in hell, which is really upsetting because there isn't a hell specifically in the Eberron setting. So it's pretty obvious that the DM didn't do his homework on that, but okay. Just, you know, the entire campaign was me just, okay. But beyond that, there were, I want to say, like 5 rooms for each floor of the dungeon. Or, excuse me, of each, well, yeah, each floor of the tower. I might slip up and say dungeon more often. Dungeon just being an interior adventure site. Or you could say the donjon, which is the highest point in a tower where important political prisoners were kept, which is where we do get the term dungeon, which is ironic because you go from the top of the tallest tower to the lowest point in the castle. Fun fact there. Yes, medieval architecture with Aramil. Uther would weep. But in any case, so there were like 4 or 5 rooms for each floor, and they were all arranged around a central staircase. Uh, and honestly, it was not interesting. That's the first problem. It was incredibly grandiose for what was supposed to be a very simple mission, and it just wasn't interesting. Like, you would open a door, and there would be monsters inside, and those monsters would guard loot, but there was no rhyme nor reason for the monsters, or even the loot, really. Um, it was as if the monsters were held in perfect stasis, just waiting for us to enter the room. They did not interact with one another. They did not leave their rooms. I think near the end of the campaign, when myself and several other veterans were getting frustrated, we just closed the door on them if an adventure was going badly, and just kind of rested outside their door. No problem. It really was. And so the big problem was the adventure was terribly disconnected from the location. All right. You had hellhounds hanging out on the 3rd floor of a tower, just no reason for it. And that ultimately was just that. It was like walking through a random encounter table. That's it. Just nothing, no plot really. Um, we get to the top, and it's just some succubus who had taken the noble's son. We didn't care about the noble's son, other than the fact that his daddy was paying us to get him back. Like, this campaign went on for at least a month, and probably longer. And all it was us in this tower, which was extremely boring. Just the tower itself, I mean, was just boring. It was the same map, okay? Layer after layer after layer after layer. I I want to say there were four rooms, there might have been six, but they were always arranged in the same way, going up. And it just there was no variety. There was no like well, I shouldn't say there was no variety. The monsters were absolutely random, but that's not a good variety. There was no reason for us to go into the monsters' rooms, other than the fact that when we had gone through and killed all the monsters, I I want to say there was a trapdoor or something at the top of each section of spiral staircase, which is weird first and foremost. Um, and that would like unlock, but near the end we just bashed our way through. Uh, it was not a well thought out location. And honestly, I cannot. I can't stress this enough. You need to have at least some idea of an interesting location. Would you want to, maybe not, would you want to spend time in this place? Because a lot of us wouldn't want to actually spend time uh, in a necromancer's graveyard apartment. But is it interesting? Is this place interesting? Or like it's not just um the dragon's lair. All right, is it three you know large caves that have been carved out of the mountainside? Okay, fine, but that's kind of boring. Put in a lava fall. All right, make there. Is there a tribe of kobolds that have carved giant effigies of the dragon's face at the entrance? Like, come on, spice it up, make it interesting, paint a word picture, okay? Um, I think my friend Seb always used to say that is just paint a word picture, okay? Or it was more paint me a word picture because he was the player and I was the DM. So you gotta ham it up a little bit. You gotta give the players something to visualize, all right? There has to be at least something cool about the adventure site. Make them remember it, okay? Um, and because that's what they'll remember. As much as the monsters, they'll remember the places. Like they might forget, you know, how difficult a fight was, but they'll remember if what was it? There was one time there was uh a really long staircase down into the depths of, well, it's called Kyber in Eberron, but uh yeah, the Underdark basically. And already the players in that campaign know exactly what I'm talking about. They remember. They're probably twitching too if they watch this, because we almost had a TPK. So, uh, but so there's this long staircase, and they decide like, oh no, man, this is taking way too long. So we're just going to cast grease on this tower shield here and slide down, which was amazing. First off, hilarious. Um, and I let him do it because, of course, rule of cool. I think one of the characters had Featherfall cast upon them and was being dragged along like a kite. Uh, again, rule of cool. Now then, but at the bottom of this uh, staircase was a giant cave full of statues, which were previous adventurers that had fallen here, which was their first clue as to the fact that there was a really nasty Medusa hanging out here. I think I called her the Duchess of Khyber. You get the point. But that was important. It was neat, first and foremost. I think she was vampiric, too. Like a vampire Medusa. Um, but it gave the players, this vague idea of, oh, there's a Medusa here, or something else that can turn you to stone. We should be prepared for that. Of course, they weren't, obviously, because GPK. I think Roz, his his character was the only one that survived, and this kind of pushed him further towards his epilogue mental breakdown, because that was like a second time that campaign where I almost TBK'd, and his character was one of the only, if not only, survivor, so he was not doing well. That was a brutal campaign. Not gonna lie. They regularly bit off more than they could chew and ran into things unprepared. But that's. You live and learn. Oh, so that's adventure sites. You got. As long as you ham it up a bit more than bare rooms, your players are more likely to remember it. Hell, you could make it into weird shapes, okay? If you're designing a dungeon, okay, and you have a series of rooms that are triangles, honestly, I'm not even joking. I'm speaking from personal experience. Your players will remember that better, okay? If you have like two triangles next to one another. And I know that because that's exactly what my father did. He had these two triangular rooms next to one another. And that's just weird. You don't see that a lot in dungeons. And we just use that as okay, over by the triangle rooms, we'll take a left and then, whatever. And I can remember that, a decade later. So it doesn't have to be difficult. You just have to put in the bare minimum effort. Okay. Try hard. Now then, I've already been speaking for half an hour, but I'll keep talking anyways, because I want to at least talk a little bit about the other side of the coin, the home base. Okay. Excuse me. Now then, home base is important, and the home base should. I don't want to say that it should grow with the players, because it's not always the case. If you are in Waterdeep and you start in Waterdeep doesn't need to get bigger for the players as they get higher level. Okay, not in a literal sense. Okay. I'll keep talking about my dad's campaign. So we started in a small little like hamlet, okay? And in that hamlet, we had the means to travel to the dungeon. It was a teleporting thing. Okay. Now, what was good about that is that as level 1 adventurers, that's fine. So we need a blacksmith to occasionally repair our gear. We have the I think it was a tavern. I don't think it was even an inn. Uh, though they had a couple back rooms that we occasionally rented out for excessively long periods of time. Um, we became friends with the tavern keeper as much as possible. And that was pretty much it. You know, it's just and that's all we needed as level ones. Uh, just tavern to buy food and drink when we weren't eating hardtack at like a general goods store and a blacksmith to sell off, you know, whatever scrap we got off of the goblins. All right, whatever. Fine. But as we progressed, it became very obvious that this little town wasn't, you know, this little hamlet wasn't going to provide for our needs. Um, and we never got very high level. Uh, my character was the highest level, and he was level 7. Okay. So it wasn't often, but very, I think like twice, we made a journey to a larger city to sell off the valuable loot and to stock up on, you know, more important things. So that's one way that the home base was obviously insufficient. Okay. Now, in Waterdeep or like Sharn or what have you, your home base has to it has to start somewhere. Yeah, and you can start small. Okay. It can just be like a little tavern where all of your guys meet, and maybe they have a patron. Dirty Mert over there, who's a freelance fence and occasionally has contacts in the Thieves Guild. Sure, why not? Whatever. Um, you can talk to him and he'll give you the lowdown on the streets. Cool. Whatever. Works for me. Maybe if you're running a rogue campaign, there you go. Um, you've got the tavern, which, as we've mentioned before, is kind of the nexus point of all adventuring. Uh, you've got your patron, you've got places to sell things and places to buy things. That's that's what you really need. Those four things very important in a home base. Okay, like a proper home base. Oh, fifth thing, place to rest. Okay, you need find the inn. Um, find whichever wealthiest PC, uh, wherever he or she is setting up. Cool. That's that's what you got. That's what you need. Okay, cool. And in the case of, you know, these big cities, as the characters level up, they grow more powerful, open up different sections of the city. Not in a literal sense, like, you know, there's an invisible wall keeping you out of, you know, the nobleman's district, but maybe as you become more affluent, more known. The guards will no longer scowl and politely escort you out of the noble district, but instead, oh yes, of course, you know, sir, whatever, dame, archmaid, whatever. That's the point. Is keep the city living, uh, keep the uh, honestly, unless the player characters are doing something like what we were doing in my dad's campaign, where our adventures had no basis in what was going on in town, all our people will notice the players doing the things. Okay, there's, I mean, even in my dad's campaign, the town started taking note of us because we were the most heavily armed and armored figures in town, first off, but also because we kept bringing in these really weird coins. Gold is gold. We definitely crashed a couple markets, though. Hmm. Anyways, but the town should recognize the players in some way, shape, or form. Okay, uh, and open up. You know, those magic shops are interesting. Make them interesting. Make them useful. Um, I've got a gnome seller in Waterdeep in almost all my campaigns who is batshit insane and an absolute hoarder. Uh, trying to, if you are trying to find something on your own, it is almost impossible to find it in his shop. I like to think of a little labyrinth through a magical storehouse. Okay, just shit piled up on shelves, and the players might remember that. Uh, Alternatively, they might just remember him because he stomps around in oversized boots that uh, make it so that his stomping around is at about 4 feet off the ground. So he's more or less eye to eye with the players and hilarious. I've completely forgotten what I call him, I'll be honest, and I'm pretty sure he has too. I digress. Uh, Open up new patrons. Uh, Dirty Mert might be great for, your first level rogue, but an 8th level wizard isn't that interested. So maybe your patrons evolve as well as you grow in power. So by 8th level, you might or might not be on Kilban Blackstaff's radar, depending on what all you do. Or maybe, one of his assistants, we'll say. So very rarely that wizard might be called to Blackstaff Tower. Cool. So that opens up that. The fighter or the paladin might be called to the central castle to speak with one of the lords there. The cleric might want to get involved with the local Cathedral of Lathander or what have you. You get the point, okay? I go through all this mainly to remind everyone that locations are important. Whether it is the adventure location, which needs good description and something interesting about it, but also the home base location. Keep that place interesting too, okay? Whether it is a flotilla of airships, which is interesting in and of itself, cool. Is it, a large city on the Sword Coast? Keep that interesting. Think about the landmarks. What sets this place apart from every other place? So keep that in mind. But I have definitely run through my time, and I hope you've enjoyed this. So, uh, leave a like, leave a comment, and until we meet again, dear friends, Antonio Tulien Meldenin, and farewell.